All in shot. I think we need to do a bit of bunching. Right, hello everyone. Sorry about this. I'm just going to do a little bit of adjustment, a bit of fine tuning. Okay, to get the tops of our heads. And I think I'm just going to check with my other cameraman. How's it looking? Are we all in shot? I'm just going to check with my other cameraman. How's it looking? Are we all in shot? Just going to check with my Sorry everyone, I do apologise. We've had a bit of a unique situation here. Sorry everyone, I do apologise. Alright. I think we've got a unique situation here. Sorry everyone, I do apologise.
James, turn the volume down.
Right, okay, I'm ready to go. I think we need to come in, if we can come in as much as we can here. Sorry, there's three of us in there. I'm using the Broken Dreams platform only because we've had some technical issues, and Facebook for some reason has now restricted my account after the last video I put out, I think when I interviewed a victim of satanic ritual abuse. So thank you so much to Broken Dreams, and it's going linking onto my Jon Wedger account. So a bit of an exclusive here. I'm interviewing Kate and Sheriff from Broken Dreams, and they are civilian child protection officers, commonly known really as paedophile hunters, or online grooming hunters, or whatever is the result is the same. These are really the future of the criminal justice system. They're going to explain a bit more, but they're going out there and they're monitoring the sort of social media where grown men mainly are grooming underage boys and girls, really for the purpose, I would have thought, for sex ultimately. To great effect. So welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to be with us. Now, Sheriff, if you could just explain to me, how did all this come about? How did it start?
Myself?
Yeah, you know, and a bit more about exactly what you do.
Yeah, so the hunting's been going on for a good, I'd say 7 years now, isn't it? Predominantly, yeah, but a good 6-7 years. Myself, I entered into the hunting because one day I'd seen a sting, and it was somebody that I'd known in a pub, and from that point I asked to be security with a team called Stop, and from there we started our team, Broken Dreams, and here we are to today.
I mean, I'm looking now at your viewing figures. I mean, you've got enormous live viewing figures. I mean, you're pulling, this is late at night, so the figure's going to be low. You're nearly 2,000 live, which is incredible. So it just goes to show the platform that you've got is monumental. It's building,
and we're finding a lot of followers from the States are joining across the world now. People are following the hunting teams. Broken Dreams is moving very quick these days, and it's expanding very quick. The followers has jumped a hell of a lot in the last couple of months. We've had to restart a page, as we'll be going into later on when I was explaining this. The page is being restricted, but yeah, it is building very quick. I'd say most of the time that we hit live, we've got 2.5 viewers watching.
A 2.5 what thousand?
Yeah,
each time. Wow.
It can roll up to 7 or 8. So
really,
absolutely.
I mean, you're really talking about the end result going into maybe possibly the tens of thousands of views almost instantly.
We've had what, 500,000?
Well, so that's the live. Yeah, the live is obviously an initial audience. It's for me, it's the reach. Sometimes after half a day, it can be a couple of 100,000 in its reach. You know.
Well, and basically explain what you do to the layman.
We're an online child protection team. We kind of try and police and monitor online activity regarding predators, online grooming, and people that wish to gain the trust manipulate and groom our children with the intention really to line them up for a meet, and as we know, it's statutory rape.
So you've got a good success rate, and you can go out there and you can put your decoys in. So can we just explain what a decoy is for those who don't know?
So a decoy is a adult that sits behind a child's profile, and they basically wait for a predator to make contact with them online.
And what sort of social media platforms do you go on?
So different teams monitor different. The hunting community is massive. Some teams monitor the live apps. Some teams monitor dating sites, and other teams we predominantly try and monitor pre-teen platforms, platforms that are designed for pre-teen, where predators are actively seeking out pre-teens.
And how do they first sort of make contact with a pre-teen? They
Again,
claim to be a pre-teen themselves, or
it's different, John. It can vary. You get catfishes, and you get guys that just come straight in with their profile.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Some feel quite safe behind that account,
right?
so they'll come in and they'll be quite honest with you.
And you catch these guys, but what if they were actually talking to a child and arranged a meeting? You know, there's a lot of vulnerable kids out there. We saw it just before Christmas when this little lad was murdered by Dad's girlfriend. I can't remember the lad's name. Was it George or something? Poor little lad. And he was sitting there crying out, "No one loves me, no one loves me." So when you've got broken kids like that, they're just in need of comfort and love, and all of a sudden someone is showing them attention online like this.
Exactly.
I mean, how dangerous is that?
Well, they're the easiest targets. So vulnerability is always, in a lot of sexual abuse cases, whether it's a child or an adult, vulnerability is a massive thing. People prey on vulnerability. That's a fact.
Well, it's been proven in the independent inquiry that a child that's been sexually abused is 6 times more likely to be exploited for sex. 6 times. So even once they've been abused, all it does is set them up for further abuse.
Yeah.
You know, it's unbelievable. And the other thing we discussed before we went on, that there's a staggering amount of children's homes, and I asked the guys, how many children's homes do you think there are in the UK? And someone said 350. There are 55,000 children's homes in the United Kingdom. Now bear in mind, and this is what come from the work I was doing, and also has come out of the government inquiry, that out of them usually 5 occupants within these care homes, on the whole they will average losing 2 to 3, so 2/5 to 3/5 of the children will go missing at the weekend for the purpose of sexual exploitation. So if we think of that colossal amount of kids, because there was a statistic about 100,000 kids going missing every week, these are vulnerable kids that haven't got a mum and dad protecting them, looking after them, and they have access to social media, and they will be going on these platforms. Can we talk about the actual abusers themselves, these perpetrators? Because once they get caught and they're convicted, they are now a registered sex offender. You know, is there anything in particular about these people? Can we categorise them, or is it just a mix?
It's a mix. I mean, the scary thing is something. I mean, you do get some odd guys that have clearly got a wire missing, but the scary thing is there's a lot of guys that you wouldn't bat an eyelid with. Nobody is themselves until they're between 4 walls on a device on their own, and that's a fact. And when you're approaching some of these guys, some of them you wouldn't even second question. Some of them have high jobs, as we know, as we'll go on later on into the interview, that we've caught some very respectable people, pillars of society in the community. So yeah, you know, but everybody wears a mask, and when you're on the internet, it's so much easier to wear that and become something that you're not. That's the problem with the internet. You can be, if you're somebody that, not that there's anything wrong with having a low paid job, but if you're somebody that's in Tesco's and you drive a Robin Reliant,
low self-esteem and all sorts of things,
on the internet you can become somebody that drives a Mercedes and you're a bank manager. You know, that's what you can persuade and
Fantasy.
Yeah.
And you see this with trolling. you know, the abuse that you get online, you wouldn't get in person because they're cowards. They hide behind the anonymity and the protection that the internet gives them.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I worked on the Vice unit, and we did have decoys, and we did have a unit that did exactly what you're doing, albeit they did it 20 years ago. And I can always remember that there was a program they had, and whenever anyone was looking in, yeah, so we're just gonna have to squeeze that round because we've got a bunch in, because there is 3 of us in there and we're really restricted. This program was any sort of monitored site, child porn site, would come up on the screen, and London as a red dot. London was just this glowing massive red dot.
You said this, yeah.
I mean, it's an incredibly difficult thing to police. We've seen massive failings in the police. We've seen their reluctance to proactively go after anyone hurting children, and that has come out of the government inquiry. Your groups are going out there actively, proactively, targeting, you know, these people that are a huge risk to our children, and you're doing it to phenomenally great success. Now, how have you been received by the police?
I started this 2.5 years ago, and I say on a lot of my updates on my lives that the noticeable change in the way that response officers are dealing with us and handling us on the ground is massively changed. That they no longer jump out the vehicle, you know, panicking and push us away. They jump out. We do a handover with them,
Right,
and they're very calm. They work with us to take the evidence. So yeah, the response units on the ground, they're brilliant. They're brilliant. Sometimes, depending on different OICs, some can work with us, some seem to be very much against us. But generally, the response units on the ground, they have. It's almost like within their training, they've been taught to work with.
I think they have. My friend was telling me that recruits are now told to start linking in more with what they class vigilante groups.
Yeah.
Right, it might be a bit of a vernacular term, but let's not get caught up on a word. It's the way forward. I see it. We've just seen, and again, I won't say his name because it seems to deplatform us. We've just seen an individual who's got a real gripe, as everyone should have really, with Muslim grooming gangs, and he's put together this video called Rape of Britain, which again is an incredible bit of work, in which in there he's actively exposed a grooming gang to a criminal court standard and a corrupt police officer. Now they're putting the paperwork together, and I would have thought it'd be ready to go without even the police needing to intervene. Unfortunately, look, we don't have custody suites as civilians. We don't have access to courts like the police do, so you still got to hand these people over.
Absolutely.
How does that work? So let's go through a sting. You've had the information, the intelligence has come through. You then have a decoy go in and start conversation.
So no, the decoy will obviously, the predator will make contact. I won't give too many tactics away that the decoy will use, but however, the predator will always direct the conversation. The decoys will never use anything enticing, right down to an emoji.
Well, that's called a laid on offence then, isn't it? So
absolutely,
they lay it on and you just take it up.
Absolutely. So they're fully trained in the way that they will respond. Their answers are never enticing. And what happens is, throughout the chat log, we will take on board whether there's safeguarding issues with real kids. That will determine whether we're going to hand the case straight over to the police.
Yeah.
There's a safeguarding issue with a real child we know of. An indecent image is sent. Across the hunting board, standard protocol, turn the phone off, call the police, they come and download it. The case is handed over to them. Right,
so that image is now on there, and if you do anything with it, you're making and distributing an image.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
So phone off straight away, over to the police. They do downloads, and that case is then handed over to the police. If they are in contact with another decoy, it could be possible that we could still go on to sting them if 3 weeks later it seems that the police haven't made a move and arrested him, and we will jump in and speed the process up.
So, and then you actively go out there and do what you call a sting, don't you? So
yeah.
So like a meeting is arranged,
Sometimes it's a meeting, sometimes it can be a door knock. It depends on the dialogue. If they mention a safeguarding issue, if they mention a real child, we'll move very quick that day.
Right.
For the simple reason, we're here to stop that. And if they're mentioning real kids or there's a safeguarding issue, that's the whole reason we're here. So yeah, we'll move quick on that.
And what power have you got to do anything about this?
We have the power of a 24-hour arrest, and you know.
So let's explain what that is. So that's Section 24 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. It's any person power. So basically, citizens arrest.
Yeah.
So if we look at this in context of simplifying it, what is a store detective? That there is someone who is acting under the same legislation. They can detain someone because they've committed an offence. They've committed an offence, which is a serious Schedule 1 sexual offence. You go in there, and they're detained, and then the police come
So if
in.
they're committing an indictable offence right up to the point, or obviously we work predominantly off the Child Sexual Communications Act of 2003. So before we do a sting, we normally work off a 5-tick system. So if they've ticked 5 boxes and committed the offences, then we will make a move on to then go and get them.
Right. And in respect to when the police take them away, do they feed back to you what the outcome is?
Some do, but a lot of the time we get updates. I mean, in theory, the victim, which is the decoy, should be updated anyway, legally. Different police forces work in different ways, different counties, they are so different in the way they operate.
Completely different.
Yeah, completely different.
Who have you been really impressed with? What force?
Met.
The Met, really? Well, first time I've heard that then.
We like
And
working.
Essex, to be fair.
And Essex, yeah.
Right,
and Essex.
okay.
We are a southern team, and if I was to say that the force that seems to work against us the most seems to be Kent.
Really?
Yeah.
What's their problem?
I don't know. I think the leader of Pollock doesn't really like the hunting team. So,
Well, there ain't much they can do about it, is there?
but again, I never really fault the response officers. I always say that
The Kent response were brilliant.
yeah,
Kent response officers were brilliant.
most response officers are brilliant. I always like when you do a sting, the first couple of minutes will determine how the sting is going to move forward. And it's the same when an officer gets out of the car. How you greet them, how you talk to them, and how you approach it will always set the way that the handover is going to go.
Yeah.
You know, if you're sitting there screaming at the Paedo and looking like a thuggish group that's surrounding him, and
Which has happened, hasn't it?
it has.
You know, and there's, I think in the early days, the inception of this, there was a lot of intimidation, wasn't there, and
That's
belittling
completely
of,
different in the early days.
yeah.
Completely different.
It's moving forward. It is moving forward, and a lot of the teams are triggering on to the calm approach. The idea now is to get to the bottom of what they've done in the past, not just what they're doing with the decoy. You know, I've said to you when we went out for dinner, I said we catch a lot of these guys, but most of the child sex offences are done within the circle of trust.
Right.
So a lot of these guys have committed serious offences with one of their own, one of their family
of course,
members.
yeah, it always usually happens, yeah.
And that's what we're there to stop and get to the bottom of, you know.
We found this with the, I think the Rotherham grooming gangs. They weren't just abusing these white girls from housing estates, they were abusing their own children as well.
Of course.
You know, and that's one of the things that never come out. The children of these people were also getting abused.
Well,
And
It's like shame to stuff that's swept under the carpet, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and there'll be cultural issues and all things, but 80% of all abuse goes on within the home.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
need to get this right. And the people that you're dealing with, these are broken people. I mean, no two ways about it. Again, I'm not siding with them, but we need to understand this mentality. If you're going to combat it, you've got to understand what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
You're dealing with truly messed up individuals, because anyone that has got this cognitive ability to find a child sexually attractive, there's something seriously gone wrong there.
It's a very hard thing to understand, though, if you're not that way inclined yourself.
Yeah. Whereas they are.
Mhm.
And they are the key to it. So my way of how I used to deal with it, I would ask them. You know. And the one way is that for them to tell you is if they like you. Now if you brutalise someone, which people used to say to me, why don't you just bash up these paedophiles? Well, what good is that going to do? You know,
exactly.
one paedophile can give you 5, 6 more other paedophiles.
Absolutely.
So that's the way I would look at it. So when you talk to some of these sex offenders, do you manage to break that barrier and get through to them?
Yeah, we do. As a team, we're moving forward. We are getting a lot of evidences. Even the last, as our followers will know, that the last couple of things have been very powerful, and we pride ourselves in getting in their head and trying to get out of them what's happened. One of the last things, guy admitted to abusing his sister between the ages of 7 and 12 when she was between 7 and 12. The next one.
That just shows how powerful it is, because that girl would never have got her justice.
Yeah. I'm just going to say that we need to go. You know, because so you've got a Schedule 1 sexual offence and them grooming a kid, but on the whole scale of sex offending, we can say that it's down there really. But sexually abusing incestuously, you know, that's a very high up there offence. So that little offence is now giving you something big.
Massively, and you know, for me, it's trying to like understand cancer. Will you fully understand it? No, but can you understand it enough to slow it down? And that's what we're trying to do. Does that make sense? Believe it or not, the hunting in community has made a massive impact because people know we're there. Whether you're pushing them further underground, that we need to improve software in the future and modernise with it, that's acceptable. But at the moment, they're thinking twice, a lot of them, before they're doing it. You know, with trying to find patterns with paedophiles, you're always trying to put together a piece of what triggered them. The biggest question with this is, was somebody born a paedophile or was a paedophile created? I don't believe somebody was born a paedophile. I believe that scenarios around them, i.e. interfering with siblings experimenting, that could be one creation for when a paedophile goes back to that very first sexual experience.
Well, let's look at this. You know, this nature-nurture argument, which is the age-old argument, you know, were they made or were they born that way? There is not a community or culture on this planet which allows paedophilia. There isn't. And as people say, well, it's written in this religious book and that religious book, it's allowed. But it's not. They've done anthropological, if that's the right term, studies on this. And even as much as to go to Papua New Guinea, a tribal jungle community, even there, when they've been totally cut off from the rest of humanity, anyone who is caught sexually interfering with a kid is banished to the jungle for 2 years. The reason being, no one can survive in the jungle for more than a year. They'll die. So they're committing them to, and if they do survive and they come back, they are at the bottom of the social pile. You know, so as primitive a community there, they still understand how detrimental sexually abusing children is. You know, age of consent changes, of course. You can understand why, because life expectancy and you know, years ago, even in my lifetime, kids could join the armed forces at 15. You know, whereas now they won't allow that. So as we progress, the age of consent, you know, age of consent, sorry, that gets lower, but kids tend to develop a lot slower. Whereas they were before. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that these people are made.
If you can be born, this is sort of the way I see it. If you're born and your preference is a woman, or your preference is a man who you fancy, then why can't you be born and your preference is a child wrongfully? But why can't that happen? Because that's, to me, that's sort of it's your preference, isn't it? You wouldn't choose to be that way if you didn't have those urges for a child.
It's also when you do start talking to sex offenders, you see what's a thing called cognitive distortion, twisted logic.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and then you'll get victim blaming, and they're liars. There's 3 things I used to do when I was in the police with them. They lie, cry, and deny. You know, and I don't know if you've had this when you arrest them. They start crying and say, "Thank God you stopped me. I needed to be stopped," and it was just a big lie.
Yeah,
that's
of course.
that Mr. Am I allowed to say the name of the fella?
If they've been convicted and they've been found guilty in the court, otherwise.
Oh, in Sussex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what was that about?
That crying went upon
Oh,
detention.
Yeah.
He was asking for help, wasn't he? And confessing
It's
it.
victimising, isn't it? It's victimising themselves. It's trying to put the pity.
Well, yeah, it's cognitive distortion. It's distorting their logic is just twisted, and they do come across as they're the victims, well, they're not the victims for this.
They try to make themselves a victim.
Yeah, yeah.
If someone's going to cry, for it to be very believable, you would have had to try to help yourself prior to being caught. In my mind, is the system a little bit failing people that might want to get help? I had a chat the other day when we met up. When somebody is arrested for, or they're just generally arrested, they're put into a police cell. At the end of it, they're given a custody sheet, and on this custody sheet will have call Frank, domestic violence,
Drug addiction.
Drug addiction. Why is there not one number on there for somebody that is a child sex offender to call up and say, "Come and get me.
Yeah.
Come and stop me. I'm about to ruin a child's life." There isn't.
Are they really likely to, though? Because they want their gratification. That's what they're after. So there's not going to be many that are going to pick up the phone.
I mean, if what they're doing was right, they'd openly do it, but they clearly covertly do this. And the other thing with the prison system is this is a fact. 96% of all sex offenders, right, when released from prison, re-offend. And I'm going to ask you now, in what time period do you think? 96% of them.
Well, look at that Euston Station.
It's 4 hours. Within 4
Is it really?
hours. Yeah. Yeah. They were
amazing.
re-offend within 4 hours.
We had someone come out of prison after doing 10 years.
Yeah, he came out of it. He had actually done 10 years inside, so he must have got the best part of 18 years.
Yeah.
Aggravated rape, and 2 months after he'd come out, he was then caught with us on a decoy on a child. He wanted that child to come with him, move with him, change schools, and be under his care to take her on board fully.
Right.
That's a scary situation.
Yeah.
I think it's only a couple of weeks though after coming out of that long sentence that he was talking to children again.
Yeah. I mean,
It was literally weeks tops.
Bear in mind, you know, the vast percentage of the sex offenders will be in for the lower level sort of sexual offending, such as child pornography and distributing images. But I'm going to tell you something now, and this is quite a scary thing, is that when the Metropolitan Police had this unit doing exactly what you're doing, they had a team of officers, and one of them I'd worked with in the past, this guy, and prior to joining the police, he'd worked for the military intelligence services, okay, and he'd had this quite glorious military career with the intelligence work in Northern Ireland. He came to the police, joined the police, and he got this job doing this decoy work. Went on this covert course. It was classed as test purchasing back then, but it's the same thing. It's covert sort of infiltration work that you do. And he met this woman, and they were into swinging, right? Swinging. And he was involved in organising swinging parties into a very wealthy suburb of London. And he was telling me that he organises his parties, and there's judges there, there's all sorts there. He was an active, quite established member of a local Freemasonic lodge. And one day he went round his girlfriend's house, and he left his laptop there. Anyway, she's gone in and had a look, and it wasn't password protected or something. She managed to get on there, and on it there was 2,000 child porn videos. He'd stolen the laptop from the police. So he'd stolen this laptop. He was working on this decoy unit, you know, doing exactly what you're doing. He's got 2,000 images, and back then they were graded 1 to 5 videos. Sorry, one being the minor level, 5 being the worst level image. If you had one level 5 image, you're going to prison. He had 2,000 level 5 videos. Some included young infant children and animals. Right? He was caught. She called the police. He was caught.
Good girl.
And he stood trial at St Albans Crown Court. So St Albans Crown Court, and I think it could have, one of the people who used to go to the swinging party may well, because he did say, oh, there's Crown Court judges go to swinging parties. He was telling me because I worked with him. And do you know what he got? Bear in mind, one image, level 5, will get you a prison sentence. He had 2,000 videos. Do you know what he got?
Go on.
Community sentence order. And he got commended for his sterling work in Northern Ireland with the military. And that's what happened.
And was he part of a lodge?
Yeah.
He was a member of a lodge.
Yeah.
Right. We know how powerful that movement can be, don't we? So,
It's not that filling well.
I'll jump to that actually.
Yeah.
quickly. So,
Yeah. Again, you don't need to name names or name places, but you know.
So, any Broken Dreams followers will remember a sting in North Wales. I won't say the town or the good guy's name. He was part of a lodge, part of the Freemason movement, and he was a pillar of society in his town. He had his hands in school projects. He funded a lot of things in the town. He was a very respectable figure, and he'd come to meet a 13-year-old boy. He'd come to meet him. Throughout the sting, he had offered to buy us out. How much would it take to throw out the money at the problem to get rid of us? And the strangest thing was, when we were on our way, I mean, he owned half the town. It was literally owned half the town.
Quite a wealthy, influential
He
guy.
had his money and fingers in the right pies.
And when we were driving to the police station, we noticed that the car that he was travelling in with the response officers had pulled over on the side of the road, and they were having a casual chat. I've never known that in my life.
Right.
And we all know that when a response unit takes somebody from a scene to the police station, it's a direct route.
Well, they have to. The Police and Criminal Evidence Act says that you've got to take the quickest route to the nearest custody suite.
So what was going on that day? It's a big question I've always asked myself. Now, he had a hell of a lot of charges, and it seemed that his legal team were calling the shots with the police. They agreed to what they wanted to agree, the charges that they would accept. But 8 to 12 serious charges, he was only charged with 2.
Right.
So the rest were pushed aside.
Yeah.
And that was the 2 that his legal team had agreed that they would accept him being charged with. Since that very day, we've had no updates, nothing.
What would have been interesting was from the moment he was arrested by the police and then put in a car, any conversation would have to be recorded. So it'd be interesting in court disclosure if there was any record of that conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, and if so, what was it? But I bet there wasn't.
Well,
No, I bet there
he
wasn't.
was throwing money at the situation with us, so I'd love to see what the conversation was in the car.
So if we just look at this now, is that before the formation of these groups that you're part of, it was just left down to the police. Right now, there's many of these groups throughout the UK.
John, the movement is absolutely massive.
Right.
We
Estimate how many groups have you got? Do you think in the UK?
I think there's about over 100 teams.
There's over 100.
There's over 100 teams.
How many people per team? Is there an average or?
It doesn't. I mean, there's about 40 on ours, isn't there, including security?
So
about 40 members.
So you've got 4 zeros on your team.
4 zeros.
So if then we multiply that by 100, that's a hell of a lot of.
Some teams are smaller. We've got a very good. we Broken Dreams. We obviously work. We're an Essex-bound team. We pride ourselves in monitoring Essex. All of us guys, the majority of us. What makes our team so bonded with the security is we all grew up together. We know each other. We're fathers, or we know our sons. We're all mingled in. We've got like James joined on board, but we're a very close unit, aren't we? Like a band of brothers, really.
Yeah.
The other teams, I can't say how big they are. I'd say they range between 5 to 20. But the movement is massive. You've got safeguarders, aftercare, you've got the ground teams, you've got the admins, you've got the biggest thing is all the decoys.
And aftercare, what aftercare do you provide?
Well, there's aftercare teams. We have safeguarding teams, and obviously, I'll give you a quick example of the safeguarders. The safeguarders are and the aftercare are a very hidden army. And I said on live the other day, when I first started joining the hunting, I'd made a few mistakes, and the safeguarders used to get in my inbox and give it to me, and I kind of used to get my back up, and I never saw the bigger picture. Now I see the bigger picture. It all comes together, and they are the hidden army of the movement. They are
because
the
the police don't provide any aftercare.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example. So if a predator has these kids on their profile, these safeguarders will then go in and contact the parents,
Right.
let them know that their child is on that profile, and they'll safeguard them.
Brilliant.
The aftercare, we have some brilliant aftercare.
They contact schools as well. To let the schools know.
Right.
So they'll contact anybody that needs to be known around them kids that are on their profiles, whether it's a gaming or a live app or whatever they're working.
Yeah, because your victim is a decoy in essence, isn't it? You know.
We're working.
It's treated the same
people.
way as a real child would be.
So obviously, a lot of guys that follow the movement, that it went through the Supreme Court, and a predator, his barrister took it to the Supreme Court to say that the hunting infringes on data and human rights.
Right.
Well, the Supreme Court's ruling was, the judges, I can't remember his exact words, but it was saying along the lines of, no, we cannot annul their convictions. We need them. It's impossible for the police to police it.
Yeah, well, they can't. That's been proven.
And then it went to the Court of Appeals, and it was deemed that a decoy should be looked upon as a real child right until the moment of sentencing, because it's not the fact it's a real child or a decoy, it's the intention of harm that predator wished upon that child till that point of sentencing.
And it's a laid on offence, so it's a bit like drug dealing. You're not agent provocateur because they're going to do it anyway. The fact is they picked on your victim and not a real victim. You know, that's the only difference. So they're bang on right. And why that has to go to the Court of Appeal, I don't know, because it's been cited anyway, even before your groups. I think that they just knew that if you're successful, it's a big problem for these people that ordinarily would have got away with some very serious offences.
Absolutely. You know, as an ex-officer, sometimes you pulled somebody in for the very smallest thing.
Yeah.
And off the smallest thing, you've found a massive thing in the background.
All the time. Every time that happens.
People that are watching our things, we're getting these guys to open. We create that bond, and we try and get in their head. And what they open up to, the reality of it is it's the people that are entrusted around them, the people that are left around them in the circle of trust. The circle of trust is and people in that circle of trust are the ones that are most liable to be abused. Okay, we've identified a guy that is a paedophile, that has these thoughts. But by bringing him and seeing what he's doing with the decoy and how he thinks, he didn't just become that overnight. Where we work and we predominantly find people that are actively seeking out pre-teens, once you dive into it, you're going to find the images. You're going to find the past search history. You're going to find who's been entrusted around them. And then the questions have to be asked. And if a real child saved off the back of that, you know.
Well, it's a no-brainer. There will be.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like a shoplifter. Well, they'll get caught one time in 100. You know, one time in 100. So what about these people? They're living in a world of anonymity that the internet gives them. And at the very least, you're going to find child pornography. You know, and when you look at child pornography, each image, each video, that's a victim. 100%. That is a victim, and you know that is a part of organised criminality. This is why they don't want you being successful. You know, they don't want it.
Well, when I interview John, I interview on the fact that is a real child. I don't think that's a decoy. You know, I don't think like that. I go with the interview that is a real child, but I will move away from them chat logs very fast. Once they've got the admittance, then we'll go try and get in their head and find out where they were triggered. Where did this happen? You know, was it a breakup in their relationship? Was it something they'd had done with their sibling when they were younger?
Yeah, how far back does it go?
Yeah, and trying to go back to where it was triggered.
Yeah, I mean, we've got. I just want to get you in there, Kate, a little bit more.
Okay.
So no, it's all right. Just because you're on the edge of it, you know. I was lucky enough to work with profilers when I was in the police as a detective, and then subsequently I work with one now. And what you've got to look at is their relationship with their mother. That's the most trying one. Find out what happened between them and their mother.
That quite a lot recently,
Yeah,
haven't we?
and then when were they taken, if they were in the care system, when were they taken away from their mother? So the younger it was, the more damage is going to be caused. And then also, then you look at the more extended family, the father and everything else. But someone made them, you know, and you can't blame the child. And at some point they was a child. So who did this to you? You know, that's a good thing to ask. Who did this to you? You know, because they didn't, in them early years, do it to themselves. They never had a choice. Adults always have a choice. Children never, ever have a choice. You know, and when that child is abused, emotionally, their clock stops. Right? And then what you'll have with a paedophile is a very deceptive individual. So what will have to override is their intelligence and their intellect and their ability not to get caught. So a lot of sex offenders never ever get caught for crimes linked to their offending. If they do, it tends to be things like deception, very thought out, well planned. So one of the things to do is never try and outwit them or be a snob with them, you know, but emotionally you will combat them. So you find out what emotional age they're at, and that's how you can get in. And it will usually be a very, because when some of these people lose their temper, they'll do very childish things. It's like petulance, like how a kid would.
Absolutely.
You know, and they behave like kids. So we've all been at work, and someone does something very spiteful, and you're thinking, why would you do that? Well, that's because that's the inner child doing it. You know, and that person, there's obviously something wrong in their life for them to behave in such a childish, spiteful way. But they know no better. You know, but be careful trying to outwit them, because they're very deceptive in their thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I find, you know, we've interviewed a lot, and there's a couple of questions that you'll never get the answers for. I mean, you can get answers about their past, you can get answers about what they've been doing, you can get admittances. There's one question that they never answer, and that is, what is your attraction to a child?
Yeah.
And that's a question that they never, even if you've got an interview where you're getting a hell of a lot of information out of them, they will never say, this is my attraction to the child. This is what it is that's attracting me to them.
We've had a couple at Ross Cooley. With him, he said it was the innocence. The innocence of the child.
And sometimes what people do is they'll go back to when they were hurt. So they may have been sexually assaulted, raped or whatever as a child. But if they go back and recreate that situation, they're in control.
High power back.
Yeah. So it's a bit like sadism, right? So if a kid is beaten as a child, they had no control over that. But they can reconstruct that by going to a madam and being whipped and caned and beaten. But now they're in control of that situation. So trying to fix it with their control and not, you know, out of it. But also the fact is that these people enjoy doing it. You know, they can say whatever they want. We can go into the depths of cognitive understanding. They had a choice, and they chose to do this to a child.
100%.
The kid didn't. They had a choice. So one of the ways what therapists will do, the ones that are successful with it, they'll turn around and they won't look at the offender as a victim until they put right what they've done wrong. And the victim must have a say in how the person is treated, you know, and because justice brings about healing, and what you're doing is you're bringing justice, you know, to a very broken world, and I can't see how anyone can take any issue with anything you're doing.
The controversial thing of what we do, John, is the live feeds,
right?
And that is always going to be, you either for them as a team or against them. There's teams out there that sting in a closed group, and I love it. I love all the teams. The ones that choose to sting in a closed group, brilliant. I'm about the exposure. I'm about letting everybody know whose hand they shake next door, who lives next door, because unfortunately I see firsthand people that have been caught by the police 2 or 3 times and nobody knows, and they're relocated next door and they're still offended. And to me, I like to take someone's mask, remove it, and show them what to take Sarah's law to the next level.
Yeah.
Where people don't have to wait 3 weeks for a social worker and 2 officers to turn up on the doorstep before they've even had an answer. And that for me is always going to be, look at the sister the other day.
Exactly.
Okay, she's come forward and she's thanked us because we've now, she's no longer a liar. If
She
it wasn't
can't
for
be
that
called a liar
lie,
anymore.
that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And there's a lot of, when somebody's abused, it's almost like that person's a giant figure in their life. They're always going. It's like a giant figure casts a shadow over them. But when they're stuck on the end of a live feed, being questioned by us, the realization is they're not that giant no more. They're not that giant person.
That's right.
And when they're squirming on the end of a live feed, answering questions and answering for their actions, it gives a lot of victims that have really been abused by these guys the power to come forward. And that to me is magical.
Well, you saw what happened when Jimmy Savile was exposed. This floodgate of victims, and of course the only argument the other side had was that they're doing it for money. No one ever does this for money. Comes forward and does this for money, you know. I mean, I get it with the work I do, and I see 1 or 2 comments coming up on here about me. I get trolled more than anyone on the planet. One day a guy contacted me and he said, we love what you're doing. You know, he said, we really do. The survivors, we love you for what you do. And he said, the reason you get attacked is because there are quite a few survivors that do go on sex abuse on kids. And they hate you. And they hate you because of what you're doing. Because they've got guilt running through them. And they hate it. And because they know what they've done. And their way of doing it is to turn it around and project it on you. It's called projection.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know,
statistic.
I never thought I would ever get attacked for what I'm doing. Well, I got attacked monumentally because these perverts are projecting it onto me. You know, and there's been 1 or 2 comments coming up now, and I know exactly who these people are, and I know why they do it, because it is their projection. One of the biggest turning points for me was when I started talking about satanic ritual abuse and how much paedophilia is involved in that. And that is when I started getting accounts shut down, being reported to the police, because these people can't afford to be exposed. Because there is an element of organised criminality behind this, and the children are their fuel. You know, drugs you use once, children you can use many, many times. It's something that I would really like to bring up here. And it's something that you said a minute ago, Sheriff, was that you're getting them for a small offence, but it leads to a much bigger offence. There was a case, I remember, in the police where a kid was groomed online, exactly the same as what you're dealing with, and this meeting was arranged, and it was in a car park in the south of England, and the police teams, it was the central paedophile unit was brought in, and this guy turned up in the car. And when he come out, what he'd done, he'd shaved off all his body hair, all of it, right? The reason being, he's not going to leave a hair anywhere. Every bit of body hair, his pubic hair, around his arse crack, his head, everything, eyebrows a lot, so totally. And his car had been lined with very thick industrial polythene all along there, right? There was a whole kit, knives, everything. And when they searched his house, they found plans. His dream was to get a child, right, have sex with a child. He had a group of people around him, a paedophile ring, if you may. They were all in on it, and they were all going to rape this child, and then they were going to mutilate the child in this wooded area, and that's exactly what he'd planned to do. You know, so this, had a kid picked up this link and not a decoy, that'd be another missing child statistic.
So how was he punished for the intention?
Well,
how do you?
I mean, he got a custodial sentence. What he got, I don't know. But you know, the law changed in 2003, or it might have been 2006. I think it's 2003. They brought in a new legislation which brought in about grooming and you know, exploitation and voyeurism and all that. Back then, it was, you know, it would have been an attempt to harm a child, to kill a child. You know, it would have been a conspiracy to murder or whatever. You know. But
one of Becca's first cases, she had something very similar happen. She was a decoy, and when they opened up the van, the fella's van, There's all equipment in there, camera equipment, weapons.
Yeah.
All sorts.
Weapons against the child. So this is what you're dealing with, you know. And this is when they sit there and cry, I'm glad you stopped me. But, you know, it's just a front.
Of course it is. Because
they're a snake. Yeah, they're on their belly and they're just trying to slither their way out, you know. And they lie. They're going to lie and they're going to deny and then they're going to cry, you know, to try and get away. And then they'll do it again.
They'll do anything to try and get away with it.
And when we look at the statistic of 96% reoffender within 4 hours, I mean, it clearly isn't working. You're dealing with people that the justice system aren't fixing. Now, here's the big argument. Do we waste time and money trying to put these people right? Is that money that could be better spent on victims, or should it be two separate pots?
For me, it's a difficult one, isn't it? When you put them in prison, you've got to give them 3 meals a day. The problem is they're segregated from mainstream jail.
I want to mention about that.
When you're segregated from mainstream prison, you're put around like-minded people.
Unbelievably correct.
Does it become a school for nonces?
Yeah.
Not a school for paedophiles. It does, in my mind. I see a noticeable difference from people that have been offended and put in custodial sentence to the level of tactical avoidance to being caught than one that has never been caught. Now, this is why I always go back to the exposure, the awareness. For me, the only type I would ever try and even line myself up to be the same as a vigilante group is the fact that the biggest sentence for me is the awareness that we're putting on, the fact that we've removed their mask and we've let the world know what they're doing. And for me, that will always outweigh a short custodial sentence, even when they're put on remand until they're sentenced. No one's really going to prison these days because of the COVID. It's got to be very serious. So even when they're put on remand, everyone's kind of like, you know, straight on remand, brilliant. But that's double bubble off their sentence when they're convicted. They've got double visiting rights. They can have more money sent in, and the perks that they get on remand are completely different to a conviction sentence.
Yeah, I know a woman who worked in one of these secure units, I think in Portland prison, and she said they would never let it out how well they were treated. You know, and the other thing, if you're segregated, if we was in general population and we was part of a paedophile ring and you were sold up with someone, at some point you're going to talk to them and say, look, I'm linked to
prison
this person.
creates. It's got to be one of the worst places for creating rings, surely, because they're putting them all together.
Well, the other thing is, if you're in general population and you are a minor cog in a big paedophile ring, you'll tell your cellmate, look, there's people involved, look, you won't believe it. There's people high up, there's barristers, there's this. And this information's going to get out. But if you're segged up as well, it ain't getting out. It stays in this confined unit. So there's 2 ways segregation works in the pervert's favour.
Do you know, a team of mine that are very close, Scorpion, they've closed down for now, but the founders and the leaders of that are very good friends of mine, and I don't know the specifics of the case, but I remember being on the phone to them not long ago, and they were so deflated with a case that should have got a serious custodial sentence was put in front of the judge, and the judge commended him because when he got caught to when he was actually sentenced, he had sought help.
Yeah.
And the barrister put it across that he'd sought help, and the judge commended him for seeking help. Well, hold on. If you had made the phone call before and tried to seek help, I'd understand that, but that's just a defence way to get on.
We had that predator that we called that actually admitted that he's barrister. It's just it's a tactic.
It's a tactic, yeah.
It's a tactic.
You know, it's almost like
look
being
like
caught.
they're remorseful and they're getting treatment and they're this and they're not.
It's been like,
to
it's
get
like
them a
being
lighter
caught
sentence.
drug dealing. You know, I've called Frank and I'm getting serious counselling now because, you know, I'm an addict. It's an escape route. It's not actually. It's not.
And also, what does it do to the victim? You know, when a young kid is sexually abused, seriously sexually abused, you know, that is a life sentence. That kid is going to serve a life sentence. Their relationships are going to suffer. Their self-esteem will suffer. Their way of thinking is going to suffer. Their body is going to suffer because it's going to get damaged and going to get hurt.
They will never be the person they were supposed to be.
Do you know what? 3 generations, I reckon. 3 generations before that pain is out.
Really?
Yeah. 3 generations, and that was cited. Not only is it cited in the Bible, it's also cited in the social services report that for that trauma, that childhood trauma.
And that's the ripple effect.
Yeah, you know, 3 generations. One paedophile, that they did a study in Belgium, they found one real active paedophile can indirectly create 2,000 victims in their lifetime. When we look at 80% of the prison population comes from childhood abuse, childhood trauma, 80%. And then we look at our prison system, how much money's put in that, and it's not working. This is what they should be looking at, you know. You know, they're going around kicking in people's doors, the police, for Facebook violations, for people putting minor abusive stuff on Facebook. They're kicking their doors in. You know, we had a guy that we know, there 15 coppers went round for some nonsense that was nothing to do with him. Yet they put nothing into to child protection work.
No,
Nothing.
No, and this is what, you know, this is for me as a hunter. I'm here. You mentioned the Bible. Unfortunately, paedophiles have been about since biblical times.
Well, beyond
what the
that,
internet does, it gives them an ability to reach. I say it on many things. There used to be a day, John, you shut your door, you shut your windows, and a man defends his castle. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and somebody had to smash their way through the door to get through past you and your wife to protect the kids. Now they don't even have to be let in. They're on that device. They sat on your couch without even being let in.
Well, and these things rule children's lives. You know, social media, and this online gaming and everything. You know, it is destroying family networks and discipline and trust and all sorts. They're appalling devices, and you know, the reach that it has, like we mentioned earlier, that these people can hide with the anonymity that the internet gives them. They can hide behind
exactly that. So this is what these are my reasons for doing the hunting. Custodial centre is good if they get one, but to be on the sex offenders list, to get the shop out, to be monitored, and to not be allowed to work around kids unsupervised. That's the 2 biggest things that come into the initial play. Then the awareness. What I like doing is taking that very thing that you just said, that secret, that ability to hide behind the internet, and flipping around that very tool that they use so easily to groom and manipulate our kids, and exposing them through the very tool that they're using to do that. And that will always be my 3 prime objectives when I'm catching these paedophiles. The custodial, unfortunately, they are separated. They are put into separate wings. They're given many perks, treated very cushionly in there, and I just don't think that solves anything. Right,
so when people are caught, they're in a world of trouble, and their world has now collapsed. In that one instance of you either turning up or knocking on their door, they collapse. What can we have some examples of what people have done to try and worm their way out of it?
People trying to blame their own children.
People tried
to blame. Yeah, we had that the other day, didn't we?
Blame their own children. Phone was hacked. The typical one. Phone was hacked. Drunk. On their medication.
COVID. But COVID quite.
COVID boredom.
Right.
I mean, apparently boredom creates a paedophile.
Loneliness.
The biggest one is the boredom. Actually, you just said they kind of blamed COVID.
Yeah, there's a period of time.
You wouldn't even make it up.
There was a case years ago of a priest and kids, when they're doing their what they call catechism lessons before they do the Holy Communion, they have to go along to the church, and the priest over a period of 6 weeks or something teach them about God, Jesus, and you know, being brought into the church. And this priest, he put up a PowerPoint display, you know, on a laptop to show the parents this is what your children are to expect. And he put his own personal laptop in, and as he put it in, he went to click on this program, and a child porn video come up. You know, a gay child porn video come up, right? And he turned around and blamed it on the work of the devil.
No.
Yeah, in front of everyone. He blamed
they believed him. Did any of them people believe him?
I think that's what he said, you know, come out in the court case, you know, because it ended up in court or something. But he blamed, it was the devil's little trick to try and, you know. So, anyone ever tried to sort of...
well, the one in Wales, he's the only one that
I tried to bribe.
He was the only one I know that tried to bribe.
He really expected us to accept it.
Clearly
didn't
paid
he?
for his whole life.
Yeah, well,
fighting
that's
his way
probably
out
how
of
he's gone
problems.
through life, isn't it?
100%,
Yeah.
And do you know,
We sort of
Sam-
knew he was going to do that before we went to this one, didn't we? Just the
Yeah.
way he was.
Just the way he was. He was kind of continuously with the 13-year-old boy, you know, oh, what, your mum doesn't get you a PlayStation, I'll get you a PlayStation when you come over. I'll help your mother out, he was saying,
Yes,
wasn't he? You
that's
know,
right,
I'm going to contact your mum and I'll see if I can help her financially and this sort of stuff. And yeah, it's crazy. Going back to something that you just said a minute ago about when I'm all about the live feeds, as I've said. I'm all about the live feeds, but I'm also fully aware that that live feed in irresponsible hands is a deadly weapon.
Yeah. Has there been any suicides?
There has been.
Yeah.
Well, the thing for me is, it's not just the predator that you're. When you've got a live feed and it's, I call it a weapon, it's the families. If you're going to sit on there and just humiliate, play up for comments and say the wrong things, I think that it's very, when we're in a point where hunting is modernising, where we are at a point where more responsibility is handed to the groups, comes responsibility.
Yeah.
And the humiliation, the degrading, as you just made a good point, when somebody knocks on your door and they're there, whether it's police or a hunting team, and they're there for child sex offences, that person's security that he was there with has completely dropped out.
Yeah.
And you know, you're entering into their domain, and I would just like to see, as hunting moves forward, more people actually interviewing properly, more people not chucking humiliation.
There needs to be operating practices and standard operating practices, you know, protocols, and I think they're probably, you're going to start seeing regulations brought in, you know.
I've always said, and a lot of the respectable hunters on the community would love to see hunting regulated. No one thinks ever, for us it's impossible. What people go and sting on and put on the end of a live feed, I'd love to see that regulated. The chat logs that are stung on, to make sure the charges are there. In the past, I'm taking it that there has been stings where it could have been handed over to the police. So yeah, that side of hunting, I'd love to see regulated. Before a team goes out, chat logs are checked and the charges are definitely there. You know, it comes with responsibility. If you want to move forward with the hunting movement and take on more responsibility as the police, take a bit more of a backseat and allow you to catch these predators.
Well, I mean, if you had the same resources as police, their computers, you'd be able to interrogate them. You personally would be able to interrogate the computers. What are you going to find on these computers? You're going to find them linking in with like-minded people. And what they'll also do is they'll identify a vulnerable kid and they'll be getting their mates in on it.
Yes.
You get, you know, and,
Yes.
and you're going to then find child porn, I would have thought, like we said, at the very least. And it will start spiraling off into all these different levels of criminality against children. But you're also going to start getting in touch with the victims, the children themselves. You know, and that takes it into a whole another world, which is what you do in the police. It would just go in, and of course these things spiral, and they spiral very, very quickly. You know, and you're dealing with some very. What we got to look at here is this line of criminality is unlike any that there is, right? Because what is a paedophile, right? Where are they from? What colour are they? What age group are they? What sex are they? What sexuality are they? They're all sorts.
They're everything.
They're everything.
They're
you know,
everywhere.
they are across the board. And I said to someone the other day, if paedophilia was a religion, right, or it was a society, it would be the most forward-thinking society there is, because there is no racism in paedophilia, right? None. There's no sexism in paedophilia. They class them, when you profile them, you're going to get your heterosexual and your homosexual and your bisexual. Paedophiles, they call them trisexual. They'll try anything. A man, for example, who likes sex with a prepubescent girl, he will have sex with a girl in puberty. He don't care.
Yeah.
And he'll have sex with a boy. They don't care. As long as it's a kid, he's happy. But there'll be a preference. You know, they're not worried what religion someone is. You know, it's unbelievable that how woke they are as a society. You know, but the thing that unites them all is that they will walk over burning hot coals to sexually abuse a kid. They will stop at nothing.
100%.
And there's always a way, and that's what you're dealing with. Very, very deceptive people. So this is what you're doing for now. A few years ago, you know, we go back 10 years, it would be unheard of. Vigilante groups, I don't mean to use that term, but civilian groups doing this. But you're here now and you've made a mark and you've become incredibly professional. I would say the amount of stings that you're doing, you are going to be more experienced and well trained than professional police units that are doing this.
I was speaking to you earlier on, when some of the response officers turn up and we do the handover, I kind of point through and I'm like, so I'd like to see you arrest him on these charges. These are what we're here for, and we'll read out. And a lot of the time, when it comes to the Child Sexual Communications Act, the officers sort of pull themselves to one side and then they'll radio through to headquarters and they'll wait for a decision back because they don't actually know how to respond.
It's a lack of experience with these cases, would it?
Yeah.
So what's the future? I mean, this can only grow, and I don't just mean decoying here. You know, for online grooming. There is potential here for you to take this to another level and start then dealing with maybe sexual assaults on children, you know, the victims themselves and things like that, because there's no reason why you can't. You just need to be trained to that court standard.
Absolutely. We at Broken Dreams, we run a survivors page next to us, Dark Secrets, that we operate alongside each other. I think that as the hunting becomes more successful and you're pushing these guys more underground, unfortunately the days of just going on your phone and catching a predator will slow down, and you need to increase the software. A lot of these predators now want to see a child on a video call.
Right,
and
okay,
if they don't
yeah.
see that sort of thing, then they will back off,
right.
You know.
It's like a cat and mouse, so they progress, we have to progress, or
Yeah.
vice versa.
So as technology
We
improves,
we have to progress, they have to progress, we have to progress.
if you watch like Stacey Dooley, that international, and they're in the Philippines, they've got all the software, they're a government funded agency, and they've got that computerized child.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of way that, you know, in the future it will have to go. It has to, software will improve, their tactics and level of avoidance will improve, and so we would have to improve our software. You know?
There was quite an infamous, on them lines, an infamous drug dealer in the north of England, and they could never infiltrate him. You know, he was a bit of a kingpin on the heroin importation, and he knew that the police could never ever, when they did their undercover work, because they'll always infiltrate anyway, you know, but they could never use children. So he would only, if someone turned up that he didn't know, he would only accept them in if they brought along their wife and kids for, you know. So if they start saying, "Oh, I'm divorced, my kids are left home," he'd say, "Sorry, but no," because he knew, and that's why he kept, because he knew they'd never use children.
Yeah.
And again, the same here, you know, that you might have some people that look young, but they're pretty much going to have to be young to look young, you know. So you're right, but there'll be a way. You say there's like computer generated things that are coming out now, and
as technology comes on, you'll be able to improve and have new ways of catching them, because whilst we need new ways, they're going to have new ways. John, there is platforms made out there that seem to be made by nonces for nonces. i.e. I'll never mention a certain app name, but there's some apps that will delete automatically any conversation within a certain period of time. What would be the purpose of that, apart from to avoid any kind of detection? So yeah, you know, I've had a discussion with a lot of people in the hunting community, and a lot of these apps that are made, platforms, seem to be designed around that sort of, you know, made by nonces for nonces, paedophiles. And just why else would platforms have a 2-hour deletion or a 24-hour deletion on messages and pictures. It's to not get caught.
Your line of work is back to front, because any other line of work, the more that comes in, the more successful you are. But the more work you come in, you do you know what I mean? Your line of success is that you ain't got any work.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and then you're out of a job. But I mean, that's the only way you can gauge it, isn't it? The fact, but
I don't know about that, because you know it's out there. So if you're not getting it come in, to me, I'd feel unsuccessful, because you know it's all out there, so you're not getting it.
Yeah, well, on that front, and that's what I was going to say, that they're not going to stop.
No,
100%. They will not stop. And the more we see society get broken, and the more we see pornography, its prevalence everywhere, it's going to do nothing but create more and more perverts. You know, and we are seeing that values are breaking down all the time. You know, the police aren't actively. The only way you can deal with this sort of work is a proactive approach. The only way. Whenever it's anything to do with children, you must be proactive. And they're refusing to do that. And this is what's come out of subsequent government inquiry, independent inquiry after independent inquiry, because there was this lackluster approach. But you know, you're getting there. I'm you know, really, when I first started these groups, my mate called me up and said, "What do you reckon to it?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know," and because there was a lot of unprofessionalism going on. You know, and there was clearly some of these sex offenders were quite damaged people, very vulnerable people. You could see with some of them, and they were getting goaded. And I thought, there's going to be a suicide, because if you detain that person, you're part of that custody procedure, and if they get killed, that's a death in custody, and that gets investigated like a murder inquiry.
Well, on that link that I watched the other day that I sent to you, the statistic wasn't it? The police were talking, and then they said, "No, I'm not talking about what hunting groups have caught. I'm talking about people that are arrested for child sex offences." They say 1 in 7 commit suicide.
Yeah, it's a high thing. Yeah, we would get it through quite a bit. They'd say that guy who got on bail, he hung himself. You know, it would happen regular. You know, and we'd get brought in and just given a quick debriefing, and then they'd have an inquiry team would come in just to make sure that everything was done the right way.
On the flip side, so that's 1 in 7 of the perpetrators. How many of the victims commit suicide? Compared to...
and we got to look at, let's expand what suicide is. You know, so you've got direct suicide. What about indirect suicide? Through drug addiction, poor life choices, because, you know, alcoholism, you do you know what I mean? No respect for yourself because of what's been done to you, which causes premature death. So I would say a lot of them.
100%.
A lot of them.
100%.
Someone asked me recently, how would you feel if somebody committed suicide that you caught? And it was a bit of a strange question, because I kind of thought to myself, when I'm doing this, I don't want any child to be abused. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for death on anybody. You know, I'm here to stop a child being abused. When a predator takes their life, for me, I look at it like this. That's a very selfish, cheap way out. And they're left, not only have they victimised their partners, their kids and everything already by abusing a child and being, you know, arrested and caught for it, they then victimising their family again by taking their life and letting them, you know, have the feelings that go with somebody committing suicide. But one big thing that happened with us when we, as a team, a guy came to us once, and his daughter had been raped, but she wouldn't own up to it, so he came to us and we arranged a meeting in a cafe. So we went for a cafe, and then she went for a walk with my colleague, and I stayed in with the father, and she came back and she'd opened up to the colleague, and then we guided them to go to the police. 3 weeks later, the father took his life. Right. 3 weeks later. So, for me, catching and stopping that, and stopping, how innocent is that father? You know, he just didn't feel like he'd protected his child, and he wasn't there enough.
Yeah, I think we saw that with one of these little kids that got murdered. The grandfather committed suicide. You know, so yeah, I mean, that's appalling. But listen, if someone makes an active decision to go out there and sexually abuse a child and then kill themselves, well, what can you do? You know,
their choice.
That's their choice, and that's that. Would I lose any sleep over it? I don't think I would. No.
Do you know, I was told once, and it turned out to be fake news. For one of my first decoy stings, and I was told that he committed suicide, and I didn't actually expect how I thought I would. I didn't feel how I thought I'd feel. It wasn't. It was a strange feeling.
Yeah.
Really strange feeling.
Yeah. No,
But I didn't lose no sleep.
No, same here, you know. There was a guy that I was taken through the court system, and he was brutally stabbed in prison. I didn't care. And I'm you know, it might sound horrible, but I didn't. The pain he put his children and his missus through.
That's exactly it.
Exactly.
Really?
We're here to stop a lifetime of hurt and pain on one individual child that could be abused. If, like you said, if they've chosen to go that route and to abuse a child, yeah, I wouldn't lose no sleep over it. It's for me, the bigger picture is the children.
Yeah.
And making sure they don't commit suicide, they don't hit drug addiction, they don't go through that pain, the resentment, the distrust towards their partners, the insecurities, the massive emotions that come off of. As a child, you know, some of the tiniest things, whether they're good or bad, as being a child, implant in your brain. And when I go back now, like I said on a few of my lives, I go back to happy moments when I was a child, camping in the New Forest. These are very significant things that stick in your mind. When something bad happens, that same thing is implanted in your mind, and that will judge how your character is later on in life and affect how you make decisions in life.
Of course.
You know,
and it'll depend on how badly he was abused, and you know, in what context he was abused. I mean, I deal with people that have got multiple personalities as a result of the most horrific abuse that they've endured. You know, one girl has got 100 different personalities. Her mind is totally fractured.
Bless.
You know, and why would they do that? Because they want to. You know, they've done it on purpose. And this woman can't keep a job. She can't have a relationship. She's constantly under mental health, suicide, and appalling issues all the time. She has her personalities arguing with each other, constant torment.
That's got to be hell.
Yeah, and you know, and this is it. You know, and the memories get blacked out, and then people get sick. They found that some survivors, not all, but were getting cancer in the throat and in the stomach. Well, of course, you can't speak out. You know, and the men were getting it. They were getting bowel cancer. You know, because of that region, and of course in the stomach, you're sick to the stomach. So there was these areas, and it's basically on the chakra regions. You know, that they were getting the cancers. You know, and this is what they do. So, no, it's good that you're out there doing it. You know, I know we've been going for a while, and I mean, you're obviously loved because your viewing figures, even though these are dropping, because I think people thought this was going to be a sting, and you know, so they literally tune in to watch a nonce get caught. But you know, there's many that have stayed on. Your viewing figures incredibly high. You're very, very popular. I mean, the comments, there's been a few. It's only because I'm on here, because I say I'm like a troll magnet. They love me, honestly, and they come to me because they'll leave everyone else alone then. You know, but that's all right. I don't mind that. You know, I've lived with this a long time. Why does Jon Wedger think the justice system gives? I don't know. I don't understand. Anyway, that went too quickly. But I'm not here to placate adults. I don't give a toss if I upset an adult. That's not my job. I'm here, like yourselves, to protect the children. And you know, let's keep going forward. You know, and can I mean, this is your fee, but can people donate to you?
We never do that. We self fund ourselves with this. The reason being is we do this out of passion. Like okay, moving into the future, upgrading software when that comes. Love to have a bit of funding for that. Upgrading software.
That's what I mean. This isn't about money, and no one does this for money because you lose money in doing it. But like anything, if you're going to move forward, you're going to need the basics to keep going. Then, and goodwill only goes so far. So, would they, if people wanted to, would they know how to get hold of you? And
we haven't really thought that at the moment. As just quickly as we're going before we come to an end. With Broken Dreams, what we're planning on doing is trying to work now with foreign agencies,
right.
And the reason being is I've brinked on it with this subject, but we want to intercept these guys. I think a lot of these real deep offenders are leaving the country to commit it in places that they believe they are evading the UK law.
Sorry.
Me personally, I would love to interrupt someone's holiday as they're going to the airport.
Yeah.
That thinks they're going to go away and rape and pay for a child and traffic a child or whatever they're doing, and take that away,
Right.
and intercept them. And
well, the law allows you to do that.
absolutely.
You know, there is a edict in our law that any British citizen, if they're going to commit a crime, and that's also preparatory if they're going to conspire to commit a crime abroad, you know, no matter where in the world, is still contrary to British law.
Section 15, meeting a child following sexual grooming in any location, said A to meet B in any location in the world, or so, B to meet A.
Well, even to commit any indictable offence. Child neglect is an indictable offence, so I never knew, or an abandonment, so I never knew why the McCanns never faced that. Again, a different conversation for a different time, but the legislation is out there. You know, we don't need any more laws because we've got brilliant laws, but they just need to be enacted and empowered, and they need to be pursued. And unfortunately, the police don't seem to be doing a very good job. But what I see hopeful is that you're building this good relationship now with law enforcement. They've got more powers than you, so you still need them. There is no alternative to the criminal justice courts. You still need them to put it through. But until that happens, you know, I hope the relationship runs in. I'll tell you what, fantastic work, you know.
Thank you.
You know, and I take my hat off. I've seen the work they've done. I've been in the police many years, out now, retired and everything else, and worked on child abuse. And it is a tough business to get in, you know. And there's no smiles in it. The only smiles is when someone does get caught, and it's a major victory. And you are having victory after victory. So God bless you, Mr. Sheriff. God bless. And thank you everyone, and God bless. Stay safe.
Cheers, guys.